Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sharpest Call of Duty League podcast. It is time for Major 2. It's Major 2 time. Week 1 of March Madness has ended. And yeah, it was a good weekend for March Madness and for us, I would say. We had a pretty good weekend. What do you think, CDLMetrics? Did you have a good weekend for March Madness and COD?
Yeah, so mostly good. My Wisconsin Badgers did lose to High Point University on Thursday, so I was not able to catch them in Portland on Saturday afternoon, but I did still get to see a couple good games. The Gonzaga-Texas game was pretty good, and I did see High Point lose to Arkansas, which I was happy to see. So a couple good results there, and yeah, COD was very interesting. I wasn't able to catch all of the games, but most of them. And yeah, excited to talk Major 2. It's a brand new format, not something we've experienced since the CDL has been around. Not all 12 teams will be participating, which is a first. And yeah, the format of the bracket and everything is a little funky. Had to retweak some modeling and whatnot, but excited to talk through it with you in the next hour or so.
Yeah, I am as well. Recapping what we did last week. Let's just get my laser pointer here. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
I had a 3-0 sweep. So my March Madness wasn't as great for me. I really struggled with that. I did not bet on a lot of favorites covering, and that's some. But I bet on more dogs, and that did not work out too well. So it was a bit of a rough week for me for March Madness, but again, the COD definitely made up for it. 3-0 here. You had a 2-1 weekend, is pretty good as well. Overall, what are your thoughts on the weekend? Did it go as you expected it to go? Any other major upsets that you saw? What did you see last weekend?
Yeah, nothing crazy. Like I said before, I wasn't able to catch most or some of the games, but I was able to catch a few. Yeah, the one miss on my part was that Minnesota versus LA Thieves series. Not even close. That was a sweep, it looks like. And every map was pretty decisive in LA Thieves' favor. So that was a bigger swing. I thought Minnesota was more of a coin flip to win that, but didn't come through. That happens. The other matches, though, I was, pretty happy to back Falcons. They did lose that series versus Surge, but that map 3 was just severely mispriced, even though it was minus 200, right? Surge are just terrible in overloads. Yeah, happy to get that through. And then, Riyadh, I guess I wasn't bullish enough on their prospects against Optic. They 3-1'd them, only dropped that map 1. And the other 3 maps were decisively in their favor. So Falcons, I think, are just a solid team. They've been solid all year. I don't know, dare I say, under the radar for most of the year. Their numbers across each game mode, their search is a little hit or miss, but they're strong in hardpoint and pretty strong in their overloads as well. I'd say we had a pretty good read on last week, and it sets up for a very interesting Major 2 bracket here going into this week.
Yeah, combined model plays and the weekly recap. So actually, we had some hits here, but a plus 0.3. So Minnesota money line minus 1.5, map 2. Riyadh plus 1.5 again. We should have been more aggressive on Riyadh there, and then Riyadh map 3 there on Sunday, and then Cloud9. They didn't get the money line, but they did get the plus 2.5. So some value there for that. Update on the points contest. So yeah, you got about up on 100 lead, and I don't think you're giving that up. You having the Falcons and the Ravens seems to be what's getting you the win here. I do have Rocker, which is good, but Koi is a severe drag on my team. That's the thing. So it's not like Koi is less than 2 of yours, which cost $5 and $3. So yeah, we both have Paris and we both have Vancouver, so that just cancels that out. But yeah, this kind of seems over. I think you picked the right option of just betting as many teams as possible. Now maybe that might change towards the end. Maybe this gets a bit closer as we go forward. If Koi makes a deeper run, if Falcons don't do as well, maybe. But again, I'm gonna need Minnesota and Toronto to have very deep runs here.
Yeah, I don't think you're done yet. It's a 110-point gap, but we still have 3 majors to play, a ton of qualifier matches, and 2 minors yet to play as well that dish out a handful of CDL points here and there as well. And one thing, like Boston and Cloud9, not even here at Major 2, so they're very live to get zeros. I guess we both have Surge, so both of those could be zeros as well if they lose their first game. And Ravens, technically for me, they have been very good for me throughout the year for how cheap they were, but another team that could just lose right away and get me nothing. Yeah, the majors are going to swing things a lot. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you close that gap quite a bit if Minnesota do have a good major 2, or if Toronto kind of turn things around, which I still think they can. Yeah, just interesting to see how these teams are shaken out about halfway through the season, but yeah, still a lot of matches to be played for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. League news. Moving on. This is, so if you want to give an update on this, this is the win total, season win totals.
Yeah. So I was just updating this morning. So basically, the second column over is each team's preseason win total. We went over those in our first episode of the year because we had lines on those, which I thought was really interesting. And just a reminder, we have 28 total qualifier matches per team. So if you see a team that's listed at 13.5, 14.5, that team would be expected to go about 500 in their qualifier matches throughout the year. So yeah, the second column over is just what their preseason expectation was at for their qualifier matches. One column over is my updated projected win total through the end of the year. So that includes how many wins they got during the Major 1 qualifier period, how many wins they got during the Major 2 qualifier period that just finished up, and then how many projected wins I have them for their 10 remaining matches, 5 for the Major 3 quals and 5 for the Major 4 quals. So add up all those numbers, you should get the exact number of CDL matches that are in the given season. And then the far column on the right side is just that third column over, that number divided by their preseason win total to see how close they are to tracking that number. So like the closest team to their number would be Boston, so towards the bottom of the page. I have them projected to finish with 9.3 wins. Obviously, they won't finish with that exact number, but looks pretty likely that they'll finish between 9 and 10 wins. And their preseason number was 9.5 wins, which is right in line with kind of what we were expecting in the preseason. But yeah, I just wanted to show this again to give an update on which teams are trending up, which teams are still struggling to hit their win number. Falcons and Ravens already cleared it. They both have 11 wins to this point. They had 9.5 and 8.5 as their win total at the beginning of the year, so those have been awesome plays, and honestly, both have a chance to just like straight up double their win total if they end the year really hot. So yeah, very impressive seasons for those two teams near the bottom. And yeah, I think the trend it's holding still, where these teams at the top, their preseason win expectations, I think, were just a touch too high, especially when you look at like LA Thieves. Like, I don't know if they can reach their win total if they go 10 wins to end it. I'd have to double check to see how many they have right now, but it's getting late pretty early for them to hit that 23 total wins number. And then a lot of those teams in the middle have been on track to clear the number. Minnesota's had a good season so far. Miami's had a good season so far. If they end the season on just what they're doing, they should be able to clear that number as well. Yeah, anything jump out to you as far as the elite teams falling short, the middle of the pack teams holding steady, or those bottom teams overperforming?
There does seem to be something right here, right? At the top of the teams, the top of the line seems to be falling a little bit. Again, Optic, basically right in line, but seeming like it's going to trend a bit under. Thieves, again, a little under. Paris, obviously under. FaZe, just over. But then Koi under, but then G2 and Heretics, massive underperformers, two of the bigger ones, with the exception down here of Falcons and Ravens, right? There seems to be some overperformance here towards the bottom of the table and in the middle of the table, and underperformance at the top. So we'll have to see if that continues on, but again, what that just leads me to think is that it's basically a clump here. With the exception of Cloud9, people thought Cloud9 might be a middle tier team. It seems like they're going to be a bottom tier team. It's clumping up here, right? 15 wins, 16 wins, 9 wins there at the bottom of the table here. But like 15, 16, 15, 14, 13, 17, 14, 18, 21, there's one team that looks good there. And then everyone else seems to be clustered between 18 and 14 wins, basically. That's very little difference, right? So that just speaks to me. It's just that there's the top team, and then there's just a clump, and then there's the bottom teams. And like that's it. That's what I take from this. This is just another data point presenting that in a slightly different way. Yeah. Okay, so you were teasing this last couple of weeks, basically the data on the CDL series links. I'll let you take it away. So what have you found here with the analysis of the past couple of years?
Yeah, it is what we thought it was. So a few weeks ago, we mentioned, man, it really feels like there are a lot of sweeps this year. And we were right in that assumption. And I think if you asked any sort of average CDL fan that follows the season very closely, like they would have probably said the same thing. And sure enough, we have a ton of sweeps this year. So this chart that you're looking at just shows the last 4 seasons and yeah, what percentage of the matches that were best of fives ended in a sweep, what percentage ended in 4 maps, and what percentage ended in 5 maps. So this is all, yeah, like I said, best of 5 series only. I'm not including like the best of 7s that we get at major finals. I want to say last year there was a minor final that went to a game 7. Some other champs finals have gone to a game 9 or game 8. We're getting rid of all those. And we're only talking about CDL teams versus other CDL teams. We've had our fair share of this CDL team is playing a Pro-Am team because it's a Pro-Am major. Getting rid of all those. And then I'm getting rid of just anything Esports World Cup related because, again, you get those amateur teams in the mix and it can skew the numbers to favor more sweeps, honestly. So you look at the trend over the last 4 years, sweeps on the left side are just continually trending up. 31% in 2023. That's a pretty healthy number, I would say. Less than 1/3 of the time you're getting a sweep. Up 3% the year after that, up another 3% going into last year. And we are up 5% from last year's numbers. And to put it into perspective, because it might not sound like a big jump from one year to the next, we're going through an 11-match weekend like we have the last several weekends. With 42% being sweeps, you're expecting like 5 of the 11 to end in a 3-0. And that, to me, that number does feel high. Like, I would much rather it be like maybe we get 1 a day and we have 3 out of the 11. But we have a ton so far this year. And it's come at the expense of both series that end in 4 and series that end in 5. The series that end in 5 are pretty flat across all 4 years. But again, this is the lowest we've had out of the bunch at only 26%. So about a quarter of the matches ending in a map 5. And then, yeah, map 4 is, again, still down 31%, down 3% from last year, down 10% from 3 years ago, just a drastic drop there. So that, I put that out there, and I wanted to dive into why, right? Like, why are we seeing more sweeps? Is it something we can expect to continue going forward? Or is it something that might just correct itself as we play more matches? Because we have played over 100 matches this year so far, which is a good number, a good representative sample of the total matches we'll play on the year. But is it just like we need to play more and eventually this thing will straighten out? Or is it here to stay? So if you want to touch on this slide, feel free to go ahead, but feel free to move forward too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, the first thing I looked at was I wanted to see if this year we have a bigger gap between teams in each game mode. Like, what is the kind of league-wide power ranking across all of the teams? So I went game mode by game mode to see, okay, maybe there's a big discrepancy in hardpoint among these teams this year. Maybe there's a big discrepancy among the searches or against the overload, whatever it might be. So this graph essentially shows you each given year. We'll focus on 2026 for now, so that the far left diamond data points you see, that is each team's win rate in hardpoint this year. So the team with the black diamond at the top is the team with the highest hardpoint win percentage on the year, and then it cascades all the way down until you get to the 12th ranked team, which is that kind of grayish diamond on the very bottom. And yeah, honestly, for the most part, in hardpoint, there is not a ton of separation when you compare this year to 2025 or 2024, both in terms of the deviation between each team and the full range, like the best team against the worst team. What is that spread? 2026 in the middle, right? Like 2025, the standard deviation between the teams was about 15.1%. The year before, same thing, about 15%. And the ranges have been all similar as well. They shift up and down together. Like last year, the range was really big. The best team was about a 68% win rate, whereas the worst team was down near 10%, which is just crazy low to think about. But yeah, for the most part, you look at hardpoint and you go, I don't know, it looks like 2024 or 2023 doesn't feel like this year there's a huge gap in terms of the best hardpoint team, the worst hardpoint team, and all those teams in the middle. So not a ton there, but if you want to just switch over to search, I can talk about that for a sec. So search, honestly, the same thing. And search, to no one's surprise, it's very tight. It's the tightest game mode that we play. This year, the standard deviation between each team is about 10.4%. That tracks very similarly to 2025 and 2023, 10.2% and 10.7%. Weirdly enough, the year where Search and Destroy was drastically different across each team was in 2024, where we had a 12.6% deviation. The worst team was sub 20% win rate. I think that was the Boston Breach that year. We're just god awful in Search and Destroy. And yeah, but honestly, you see a lot of these years, right? They're tracking between 30% and 70% win rates across the league, and pretty tight dispersions between each team as well. Again, another data point where I go, I don't know, it doesn't look that crazy to me. Like we don't see a drastic change between teams and searches either. So I pivoted over to game 3 because it's like, hey, we have a new third game mode this year. We're playing Overload instead of Control. Maybe that explains it. So if you wanted to switch over to that third one here. So yeah, this is league-wide the third game mode win percentage. So for this year, it's Overload. The other 3 years, we're talking about Control. And this one is a little different. 2026, this season, tracks most similarly with 2023, actually, which is interesting because if you recall, 2023 was the year where we had the fewest sweeps among the league as a whole. So yeah, it's a little bit weird so far, but it doesn't make sense in terms of you would expect 2026 to look more like 2025 or 2024, not all the way back to 2023. So maybe there's some funkiness here that explains some of the sweeps, but again, nothing really jumping out to me of, yeah, there's clear gaps. You can see between the 11th best team and the 10th best team this year is a pretty big gap. But you get into that middle cluster between 40% and 70%, that's all pretty tight still. And the range itself from the best team to the worst team, again, not crazy big. It is large, but not so large that you'd be surprised by that. So I aggregated each of these game modes to see if there was a trend across each year. So if you wanted to flip to that next slide, that kind of explains, if you add up each hardpoint, search, overload, the dispersion between the teams and the total range. What do we find? And again, I'm not seeing much that suggests that we should get a ton of sweeps this year. So the average deviation between the teams across each game mode this year is 13.1%, which looks a lot like 2025, which was at 13%, and honestly isn't too far off from 2023, which was at 12.8%. And again, that is interesting to me because 2025, relatively high year for sweeps, 2023, relatively low year for sweeps. Those numbers are very similar to 2026, where we have the most sweeps so far. I wanted to look at total ranges too to see if that was more of an explainer, but again, actually 2026 feels like a tight range for hardpoint, search, and overload. 43.9% is the average across each game mode's range, which is the second lowest among every year we have so far. So my conclusion with this, and I still have more data I want to talk about, but my conclusion to my hypothesis, which was like the league itself is the power differences between each team in the league is drastic this year, I don't think is true. I don't think there's anything to like big gaps between each team. If anything, I think 2026 should look a lot like 2024, like a year where maybe sweeps are up a little bit, but not to the point where they're at now. I'll pause here and just, if you have anything you wanted to reflect on with these numbers that surprises you or maybe doesn't surprise you from each game mode.
Yeah, it's weird, right? So I'll go back a couple slides here for sweeps, right? 100%. We have the most sweeps we've had for all the years of tracking data, and probably easily back to, I'd assume, even Cold War too. Easily the most amount of sweeps, and the smallest amount of tied for Modern Warfare 2 with that. Lot of formats in Modern Warfare 2 though. So that's a lot of interesting. A lot of went to game 4, and Hardpoint was, it felt like particularly dominant. It felt like Hardpoint was the map where games were closed out. But this time it just feels like overloads the map where a lot of them are closed out. So my thing is this, and again, the data you go through, you make a really good case here. You're like, there's nothing weird here. Like this is mostly fine. The standard deviation here is a bit lower, but closer to that one. Same with search and overload as well. There's nothing that sticks out as like, oh, that's why we're seeing all these sweeps. There's nothing that says that.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I can think of is kind of like when you flip a coin and you're sitting there and you're flipping a coin and you get 4 heads in a row and you're like, oh, you're like, maybe we'll never get tails again, right? But eventually you'll get tails, right? And it's just like, we don't see it in systems like this that often, but there is that not a one chance, right? That it's, oh, we're just going to see a bunch of sweeps right now. Now, maybe this is, whenever you see data like this, you always have to be like, is this something inherent with this game or something like that? Or is it just random chance? And I think what you're suggesting is, yeah, maybe it is random chance. Maybe there's nothing in the data specifically that suggests we should be seeing all these sweeps. There's nothing that's, all the teams are good in hardpoint, that's why we're seeing all these sweeps. There's nothing that says that. So maybe it's just there's just a rash of that bad luck here. Maybe that's what it is, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you all the way on that. Like, when I stopped here and just looked back on the numbers, that's the same takeaway I had, was just like, why? I still don't know why we have so many sweeps. I think we will get fewer moving forward, but I did have one other data thingy I wanted to check, so if you wanted to flip to that next slide. This is more to do with how good a team is across each game mode and how that correlates to other game modes that we play. So my theory is that, okay, maybe if there's not a lot of separation between the best team and the second best team and the third best team, right, because it looks like there isn't so far this year, it doesn't look anything different to years past, maybe the teams that are, if Team A is better than Team B in hardpoint, does that translate to search? And does it translate to overload? And this year, again, my findings are like, no, not really. So if you look at that 2026 column, the correlation between a team's hardpoint win percentage and their search win percentage is almost meaningless. It's at 0.09, and these are on 0 to 1 scales. These are just R-squared values for the linear regression. It's a bunch of math stuff, but if you're at 0, that means there is no correlation between these two things, and we are almost there for hardpoint and search. If you're a good hardpoint team this year, that doesn't mean anything for how good your search is. It maybe means a little something. You could be a great hardpoint team and a horrible search team. You could be a horrible hardpoint team and a great search team. You could be mid at both. It's all over the map. There's really nothing there, and it's the lowest for those two game modes that we've had so far in this 4-year period that I'm looking at, and it's by a lot. The one thing that I think is interesting to point out is that, yeah, that next one down, hardpoint and the third game mode, so overload or control. The correlations are pretty it's the strongest almost in every year we've had so far. Game 1 and Game 3 correlate really strongly, and that makes sense, I think, intuitively. And yeah, this year I think there is something to that. The good hardpoint teams are often good at overload. The bad hardpoint teams are often bad at overload. And those same kind of correlations track. You look at a year ago, it's at 0.66, very close to what we have this year, 0.68. 2 years ago, 0.61, still somewhat strong correlation. And then you go back to 2023, where we've had not a ton of sweeps, and it is lower. It's at 0.4, so that is a big jump down. But again, 2023 was the year where sweeps were few and far between relative to these other years. So that one's interesting. And then if you go down to that bottom row, like search and overload or search and control, pretty weak correlation across the board. Again, last year, a pretty strong correlation, which was interesting. And 2025, relatively high year for sweeps. But this year doesn't seem to show a ton. If you're a good search team, it's iffy if you're a good overload team or not. I did think it was interesting that correlation was higher than the first one, because in every other year it was much lower. But again, you average out these correlations across the board, and this year looks very similar to 2024, and it doesn't look that far off from 2023. And 2025 looks like the outlier where, okay, yeah, there is a big difference between these teams across game modes. We should see a lot of sweeps, and we did last year. In 2026, again, it feels like these numbers should trend more in the direction of what we had in 2024, where it was pretty flat across the board, whether we got a sweep 4-map series or a 5-map series. Long story short, very long story short, is I really think the number of sweeps will go down as we near the end of the season. I still think you will look back at the end of the season and be like, wow, we still had a ton of sweeps in this 2026 season, but I think some of that was just dumb luck, and I think some of that was just early season. There was maybe a difference between these teams and how they competed across these game modes. But as we go along, I think that sort of difference between the teams and the difference in the game modes will start to shrink. We'll get to more 4-map series. We'll get to more 5-map series. But yeah, just really interested to dig through this data and see what it had to spit out. And yeah, I'll keep tracking this as we get towards the end of the season and see if these numbers continue to hold.
Yeah, I think this number is really interesting here. I think in some level this might explain what we're seeing, because this basically, it's not completely, but it is the strongest correlation on the board. Net mirrored only to like last year, whereas just if you were good at one mode, you were good at all the modes, right? With this one, this is if you win the hard point, you're going to win the control. And it's just, can you win the search? And if you can win the search, then okay, you won the hard points, you're going to win the control, right? And that might be where this is coming from a little bit, right? That might be where it's, oh, okay, if you win the hard point and you just scrape out a win in the search, then, because with some of these matches, it just feels, oh, okay, they're up 0-2, they're up 2-0, it's over, because it does strong correlation, right, between hard point and control, right? Maybe, right? I don't know. We'll have to see. I think we'll have to see. This number alone shouldn't explain the sweeps, because again, this number doesn't. This year, you would think, oh, this year had a huge amount of sweeps, and it actually didn't. The numbers still don't add up. We could just be getting some really bad luck with this, and I think we'll see this going forward, but it's really intriguing. So, anyways, moving on to the recap of the week, and again, even then, look, less sweeps. Still a lot of sweeps, but less sweeps now. So, we're already seeing the data trending in real time. Carolina went 2-0. Against Cloud9. Somehow they beat Heretics. I'm not sure how they did that. FaZe swept Cloud9 and they beat Paris 3-2. Minnesota swept Vancouver 3-0. But then they also got swept by Thieves, which I guess makes sense, but also doesn't. Somehow Falcons beat Optic 3-1. Miami swept Boston, which makes a lot of sense. And then Optic swept Toronto. And then Thieves narrowly scraped out a win there against Paris 3-2. And then Vancouver somehow beat Falcons, which I don't. There's some that made sense this week and then some that didn't make sense this week. Like, for example, if Minnesota was going to sweep Vancouver, then how did Vancouver beat Falcons? That doesn't make any sense. And then it's like, sometimes this game is very weird. Sometimes it makes no sense. But what are any thoughts for you have from games this week?
Yeah. So the few takeaways I had from last week's matches was, number one was Optic finally lost. Riyadh 3-1ing them on Saturday, I think, was very impressive, considering that they won it pretty decisively after map 1. And map 1 it's a 43-point win for Optic, which is a relatively comfortable win in my metrics. But, right, you go out map 2, you win in round 10, that's solid. You win by more than 1 in Overload, honestly, that's huge. And then you go out and you beat Optic by 60 plus in map 4. That's really impressive. Like, Falcons are a very solid team, and I just think they have what it takes to like go on a run at one of these majors. And honestly, if they were to make champs, which I think they will, make a run at champs. Like, I think they have all the ingredients. Their Overload is so solid that I think, honestly, if they just split hard points and searches with a lot of these teams, I think their Overload can carry them to a ton of wins. So happy to see them win on Saturday against Optic. Like you said, the Vancouver Falcons game on Sunday doesn't make sense, but when you look at, okay, maybe it was decided in map 1, right? The fact that Surge were able to get that close hardpoint win, and their hardpoint has been trending up lately, that was everything, right? And Falcons just continued to be up and down in Surge. So they dropped 2 there, but the Overload win as expected, and then that map 4 was like, clearly Falcons were the better hardpoint team on that map. So a close loss for them, but an understandable one when you think about each map and how it played out as a whole. Paris, right, pretty disappointing. Like they had a tough way to finish their stretch with Vegas and LA Thieves. They both go to a map 5. They fall flat on their face in both of them. Yeah, it's just like Paris are not the same team they were at Major 1. That's no, I'm not breaking any news there, but like they're not far and away the best hardpoint team in the game anymore like they were early in the season, and their search and overload just have not made up that ground. So they're close losses. Like I don't think Paris are in a disaster right now. I just think they're working through some things. They're clearly not where they were to start the year, but I wouldn't be shocked if they turn things around and are able to fix their search woes or their overload woes as we near the halfway point of the season. So those were the big takeaways for me. Obviously, we had a couple other kind of weird results here or there, but yeah, those were the main takeaways I had just from last week's 11 matches.
Yeah, I think so. So, moving on to the major, here's your bracket for the major. There's the 2 playing games, Toronto versus Vancouver of Canada there, Carolina versus Paris, the battle of teams that were formerly located in Europe. Actually, no, one is actually located in Europe. One was located in Europe. This would have been a home game for the London Royal Ravens, but they are based in Carolina now. And then you have G2 versus Falcons, Thieves versus FaZe, and then you have these 2 games. They will play out after that. And then I think they're going to play 2 more games, right? I think they play these 2 games.
Yeah. So the matches are in an interesting format this week just because we're only playing Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Usually at majors we play Thursday as well. But yeah, we'll have 8 matches on Friday afternoon. So it'll go those 2 play-in games. Then we'll play those 4 winners bracket round 1 games, standard what you'd see on a Thursday afternoon. And then the losers of those matches will play in the 2 elimination games to end the night in that lower bracket. By the end of the night, we're going to have 4 teams eliminated, if my math is correct, the 2 play-in eliminators and then the 2 from the losers bracket round 1 game. So yeah, 2 teams aren't even here. 4 teams will be done by Friday night, and we'll only have 4 left at that point. Yeah, things are going to move pretty quickly. We'll have an alpha stream and a bravo stream to get all 8 matches on Friday. And then once Saturday rolls around, we're in the regular flow of the major. But yeah, interesting bracket how it shook out. Like Texas, the 1 seed, that's no surprise. They destroyed the competition at the qualifiers. Pretty nice matchup. They'll either get Toronto or Vancouver. And then Miami actually was able to get the 2 seed, so they'll get the other play-in winner of maybe a more interesting Carolina-Paris series there. And yeah, the other ones played out with some teams we expected to see in that middle portion, Minnesota, Riyadh, Thieves, and FaZe. Yeah, very interested to see how this major plays out. I am a fan of just trying new things. I'm cautiously optimistic, but yeah, I think most fans will be like, what is this? Is different. But just give it a chance. We'll see how it plays out. I don't think the CDL will continue these moving forward, but I at least want to see how this kind of shakes out throughout the weekend.
Yeah. Match previews. First match, Carolina versus Paris. Paris is somehow minus 350 in the money line. Paris minus 1.5, minus 150. 42.5 favorites in the hard point, 1.5 favorites in the search, and 1.5 point favorites in the overload. Yeah, I disagree, and I think you disagree too. Maybe I'm a bit too bearish on Paris. That's fair. You can accuse me of that. That's fine. But I don't think Paris should be nowhere near an 80% favorite to win this game. That should not be. You want to make them a favorite, okay, but not 80%. Definitely not in hard point. I don't think they should be that big of a favorite in hard point. My model likes them. My model likes Carolina outright. So I'm taking that plus 250, and I'm taking that plus 110, and give me that hard point, and give me that search, and maybe that overload too. I'm just everywhere. Just give me Carolina up and down the board here. Something's wrong with Paris. I don't know what it is, but I'll take a scrappy dog here rather than this Paris team that's limping into the major. What do you see here?
I agree. Yeah, my numbers are a little more shaded towards Paris than yours are, but I don't disagree with you. I really think this is, I don't want to say a coin flip, because I do think Paris are a better team, especially on LAN. If you go by what we saw on LAN, Carolina absolutely flamed out at Major 1. Paris won Major 1, although it was very close, but they looked great. But yeah, it's hard to be convinced that Paris, through their last several series, like, it's hard to have that much faith that they'll be able to even win this series. I think if I had to set the line, I do think I'd make Paris a small favorite still, just based on what we saw at Major 1, what I think this team is capable of. Maybe the fact that it's on land will get them into the right mindset against this Carolina team. But the fact that we're talking about a 10 seed Paris Gentlemates having to play into Major 2 is wild. If you would have told anybody that after Major 1, you would have said that's insane. Paris are the best team in the game. They get an 11-match qualifier period against each team. In theory, the best team should bubble up to the top. Like, Paris should be a 1 seed, a 2 seed, a 3 seed, not a 10 seed. But here we are. They've won 1 of their last 8 matches. That goes back to February 27th. It is March 24th as we're recording this. Like, it is rough. And their 1 win was against Boston Breach, so they're not even here. Yeah, Paris have to be a much, much shorter favorite, in my opinion. The one thing where I can see it for them is with Overload. Now, neither of these teams are good at Overload, but if you look at how the vetoes might play out, I think Paris are going to get a slight edge in that. So even though I have it more as a 50-50, if you just assume we're not going to play Exposure, which I don't think we will based on how each team looks on that, they should be the favorite team on Den and Scar, but not like a huge favorite on either. I'd maybe make Paris like a 60-40 favorite in that map 3. But there's no doubt, like, Ravens are a better Surge team. I'm not sure why they're the underdogs in map 2. And then, yeah, Hardpoint for Paris has just not been the same over the last month and a half. And Ravens, although not a great Hardpoint team, I think are a good enough team to compete. Yeah, all signs point to this being a really close series, I think. And if it's going to be close, yeah, I'd rather side with Royal Ravens in this spot, which is just, again, crazy to think about with how far Paris have fallen the last 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not touching Paris. Definitely not at minus 350. A second play-in match. Again, another team that has not done a lot here. Toronto minus 400 on the money line. Minus 1.5, minus 175. 39.5 point favorites in the hard point. 1.5 round favorites in the search. And 1.5 round point favorites in the overload. Yeah, again, I think we're both going to fade the favorites here. I don't love the money line here like I did with Carolina against Paris, but the plus 1.5 here, that's not bad at all. I like that. I don't hate a nice hardpoint spread here. Search spread is good. I really like this plus 1.5. I think there's some real possibility here of Vancouver pulling the upset. Maybe not necessarily, but maybe forcing a game 5, I think is a very real possibility here. Would you agree with me here, or would you rather back Toronto in this one?
Yeah, no, I agree with my model, with your model. I think Surge is pretty live to win this, if not at least make it really interesting. The one thing with this is we did just see this match a week ago, not this past weekend, but March 14th. Toronto were able to win 3-1. They took both hard points, they dropped the map 2, and they won the map 3 pretty convincingly. Overload, I don't want to touch on it too much. Surge are horrible at Overload. They will likely lose that specific map, which they did against Falcons a week ago, but were able to still find the win in the series through 2 searches. I think that's very live to happen in this series. Like, I have the searches going 50-50, but if Surge were able to take both of them, I think they're good enough to also take a hard point off of Toronto. Toronto is a better hard point team, but again, not so much so that I expect Toronto to just crush Surge. So it really comes down to, is Surge going to get a hard point win or 2, or a Surge win or 2? Because again, that map 3 is probably not happening for them. So all things said, I actually think I'd prefer Surge on the money line than the plus 1.5. Things could go awry, right? If Surge are guaranteed, let's just say they lose the map 3, like, it could go off the rails if their hardpoint isn't on that day, like we saw with those game mode correlations, right? Like, hardpoint and overload correlate very strongly. If they drop that map 1, not looking good for map 3, then you're relying completely on Surge in the map 4. So it's a thin path for Surge, but there are a couple ways for them to get there. And yeah, I just don't think Toronto are still, like, justified to be this big of a favorite against a mediocre Surge team. I think both of these teams belong to be in the play-in, though. This feels like a matchup where neither team deserved that spot in the bracket to begin with. So, yeah, play it out. We'll see what happens. I expect Toronto to win, but I think Surge are super live to make this interesting and maybe pull off the upset.
Yeah, I agree with that. The other match we have, Thieves versus FaZe. Thieves minus 125 on the money line. Thieves, or no, sorry, no, Vegas minus 125 on the money line. Sorry, it's confusing.
It is.
Vegas minus 1.5 plus 200. Thieves are the favorite in the hard point, 2.5 point favorites in the hard point. Vegas are 1.5 round favorites in the search, and Thieves are 1.5 round favorites in the 1.5 point favorites in the overload. I think this is gonna be we're gonna have a bit of a model fight here. I've got Thieves here. My model likes Thieves, thinks they're the better team here. I think you've got FaZe here, or maybe you're just staying away from this one. I'm definitely not touching. Maybe I'll throw the plus 1.5 into something, but probably not because of how many sweeps we've seen this year. But I'm definitely playing money line here. Maybe some map to map stuff depending on what the maps come out as. Are you touching anything on here, or are you just staying away from this one?
It, to me, feels priced about right. Yeah, I think Thieves are the better hardpoint team, but not by much. I think Vegas are the better search team, but again, not by much. One thing I haven't really checked on this is vetoes for overload, just to see what we might play. I have Vegas as 4th, 3rd, and 7th on Den, Exposure, and Scar. Thieves I have as 6th and 1st. So if you're Vegas, you probably want to veto Scar. Yeah, that will likely get vetoed. It's Thieves' best map. It's your worst map, which means we'll play a Den or an Exposure, 4th and 3rd versus 6th and 6th. So I think Vegas probably have the slight edge in map 3. My number seems to indicate, 53%, maybe a touch higher. Yeah, I don't know. Like it feels like both these teams will split hardpoints, split searches. It'll come down to the overload. That's where I give FaZe the edge, but again, like that, even that is close, I think. So to me, the fact that it's priced at almost a coin flip feels about right. Vegas coming in on a 3-game win streak, albeit over Royal Ravens, who are okay, a Paris team that's reeling right now, and a Cloud9 team that's the worst in the league. LA Thieves won their last 2 against Minnesota and Paris last week. We just saw that. The week prior, again, a Cloud9 win, lost to Falcons. Before that, a little bit of a rough stretch. So both teams up and down to end the Major 2 qualifier period. I think both teams are very live to honestly win Major 2. It would take a lot to get there, but like we saw FaZe go on that run at Major 1. They've looked a little better the last couple weeks. Thieves, I think, have figured out some things, but again, it's going to take a lot to take out the optics of the world, but I think both these teams have a real live chance to make a run here. To me, it is hard to make a pick in this specific game, though. I give the edge to FaZe based on overload, really, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if Thieves come out and look great. Wouldn't be shocked at all if FaZe come out and look dominant. It can go a lot of different ways, in my opinion. Mostly a stay away for me. If you like Thieves, totally fine with that. I tend to like underdogs that are more reliant on hardpoint than search, and Thieves fall into that category. Their hardpoint is on that day. Maybe they can pull off the slight upset in map 3, or maybe their search looks good too. We'll find out. But a great game as we move through Friday afternoon for sure.
Yeah, this will be a very good game. I'm really excited for this game. Companion to this game, the other game that we have that we 100% know about is Riyadh versus G2. Riyadh minus 163 on the money line, minus 1.5 plus 125. 17.5 point favorites in the hard point. Minnesota is a 1.5 round favorite in the search, and Riyadh is a 1.5 point favorite in the overload. I like Minnesota here. I have them plus 120 seems a little low, I guess, for them. I have them about a 60% chance to win this. I'm on Minnesota money line. I don't love the plus 1.5 at minus 175, and I might bet a couple of individual game spreads here. I think it's both interesting that we both have Minnesota ahead of the market line there in the search. But other than that, I like Minnesota here. I think they can win this game. If they can steal this hard point, they're probably going to win the series. And I think that's the thing, right? These are priced identical. I don't think that's necessarily an accident. If they probably win a hard point or two, it's their series.
Yeah.
What do you say about that one?
I think that's a pretty good take. Falcons, the thing is, like, Falcons have been playing very good hardpoint lately, like throughout this entire qualifier period, and Minnesota has been up and down in that game mode. And honestly, their search has fallen off a little bit. If you're G2, like, they've won 1 of their last 4. That one was against Surge, who aren't a great Surge team. But they did go on a nice little run halfway through February in Search. Like, we know Minnesota are built for Search and Destroys. The difference is just, yeah, Falcons, again, like, one of the best Overload teams, if not the best. We're actually high on Falcons in that map 3, and yeah, I think they win that map. Because just based on what Falcons have done lately, like, Falcons have said, we're not playing Den Overload. We will play you on Exposure or Scar. You choose. They're a combined 12-2 on those 2 maps. And like, Minnesota are no threat in Overload. They do have a 2-1 record on Exposure, so it's 2-1. That's above 500, but it's only a map they've played 3 times, so they don't have a ton of confidence, I would say, in picking that map. But if you're not going to play that, you're going to play a Scar, which you're 2-5 on, one of the worst teams in the league. So yeah, map 3 feels like Falcons. If Minnesota are going to push this to a map 5 or win it, feels like you got to bank on Search and Destroy coming back. And like Falcons, that is their one weakness. So I get why we're both high on Minnesota map 2. I think, yeah, price is about right on those hard points. I think Falcons should be a slight favorite, but wouldn't be shocked if Minnesota can split with them. But yeah, it might come down to, like, you need Minnesota to come through in 2 searches or pull off a really big upset in map 3 for this to come home. All that being said, like, it is close to a 50-50 for me, and it's only a 60-40 for you. So again, what should be a really good series on Friday afternoon. Very excited to watch this one. I do like Falcons. I like their makeup more. I like the way they've played over the last several weeks. And I know they're weak in Search, but if you're going to be weak in one game mode, I'd prefer if it's Search or Overload and, like, just figure it out. So I think Falcons maybe by a hair are the favorite in this one, but yeah, it should be a really good series here.
Yeah, I agree. All right, moving on for the futures preview for the major. Here are all of here's basically odds to win, and I think this number is how you rank them, I think.
Seed of the team, actually.
Their seed.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Miami, again, we'll look at the win here in a second. Miami sticks out to me as like a team to watch out for. I think 12-1 is maybe a little too high. Optic, that seems a little low for me. Plus 100, I want that number to be a bit higher, but I understand completely why it's plus 100, right? We could be sitting here. There's a real possibility we could just watch this major, and it could just be like we could just see Optic steamroll through everyone, and we could be like, oh man, plus 100 was the easiest bet. 100% we could. And I am scared of that a little bit. I think that kind of makes a lot of sense. We could just see Optic just steamroll, or we could see Optic go out 0-2, right? I don't know, but they have been one of the most dominant teams in the game right now. Paris is just this seems like the sportsbook's just betting on Paris to return to the mean reversion, and I just don't think they have it, right? This is a team that literally is any point in time they're basically starting in, or no, okay, so they're not starting in the losers bracket. If they win their first game, they get some protection, but they have to win their first game, right? They could just literally be immediately out.
Oh yeah,
that's a little concerning. If that was me, I'd be a little concerned about that. Surge and Ravens, I don't want to touch those. Can they get out of the first round? Yes, but they don't seem to be favored to. So what are your thoughts right off the bat on just seeing this?
Yeah, really unique. I don't think we've had another major in CDL history that's looked like this from a futures perspective. To have the 10 seed as the 4th favorite to win, albeit they're 8-1 to win, so unlikely to happen, but just the fact that there's that big of a discrepancy between their seed and their like expectation for how far they're going to go is, yeah, it's a lot of faith in the books to be like, hey, Gentlemates they were great at Major 1. They won the whole thing. The Major 1 qualifiers, they were awesome in those as well. The last 6 weeks haven't been kind to them, but you got to put some respect on the name because it's LAN, it's different. But yeah, it is a really tough number to get to, even like you talked about, like, they could show up against Ravens in that first series of the day on Friday and just lose. And it's not going to be a surprise if they do. And you're going to be sitting there, oh, they were 8-1 to win the whole thing, but couldn't get past a Ravens team that is okay. Ravens honestly lost out. They got unlucky on the tiebreakers. I think there were 4 teams that were 6-5. And one of those teams was going to be a play-in team. And unfortunately, they were the 7 seed. So yeah, Ravens aren't a bad team and could very well beat Paris on day 1. Like, you look at where the 7, 8, 9 seeds are in this lineup, like, they're 25-1, 100-1, 200-1 to win this whole thing. And honestly, pretty big underdogs just to get to the final on Sunday. A weird number for Gentlemates. The Optic number is worth pointing out because it is not something we see a ton, where a favorite is even money to win, minus 275 just to be there in the end. Part of me thinks it is justified, right? Like, they very well could have won Major 1, maybe were more deserving to win Major 1. They don't, but they come out and go 10-1 in the qualifier periods. Their only loss was to Falcons last week, who are, like, I love Falcons. I think Falcons are a very good team, so I totally get that loss happening to them. But yeah, they're no doubt the best team in the game. The question is, is there another team or two or three that can get up to Optic's level at this major? I still think there are. Like, I know FaZe are the 6th seed, but they went on a heck of a run at Major 1, and I still love their Search and their Overload. If their Hardpoint can show up, like, I think they are very live to win. Thieves have improved since Major 1. And yeah, you mentioned it too. Like, Heretics are the 2 seed here. They won 7 of their 11 qualifier games. They're not bad at any game mode. Like, they are solid across the board. Why not them? I think they've got a way better shot than Paris, honestly, and Falcons too. You know how I feel about Falcons. So just a weird board. I'm curious to see if it shakes up at all as we get to Friday. But yeah, just a really strange major because it is a new format and because the odds don't seem to reflect like how these teams have played over the Major 2 qualifier period, at least for a couple of these teams.
Yeah, I agree with that. Moving on to odds to win the major here. I unfortunately didn't run the odds here, so I didn't build up the model to calculate this. But yeah, your model is a bit high on Optic, a little bit overvalued. Or no, sorry, undervalued. Sorry, my bad. That's the book line. So Optic is a little under. You're a little over on Miami, not by a lot, but you're also saying no bet here, other than just don't bet on Paris. Don't bet on Paris. That's a bad idea. Yeah, go ahead.
You're not wrong. That analysis is pretty spot on. Just avoid this one. And that's no surprise. Like, the odds to reach the major it's just a better market to play, in my opinion. Yeah, you mentioned it. Miami maybe is slight value there. Like, I have them as the top 4 team in the league right now. They are the 2 seed. Their matchup is interesting, to say the least, who they will draw. They'll either draw Paris or Carolina. If it's Carolina, right, I think Miami should be favored over them. They are the better team. If it's Paris, right, I still think Miami probably should be favorites, which is crazy to say, but I think the book would set like, oh, Paris beat Carolina, Paris should be favored over Miami. That seems to be true in the futures market if you look at where these teams are. Yeah, fascinated to see how they play out. My number on Vegas is pretty fair. Like, they're about 20% to win in my model. A lot of that is predicated on their very good search team. If you get to the major final, you get that extra search if you need it in map 7. But yeah, for the most part, book is about right everywhere, except, yeah, I think Paris are just way overvalued. And my numbers, right, my numbers are all encompassing for the season. I don't weight recent performance at all. They're just more data points that get thrown into the mix. And yeah, like, Paris are still that low. And a lot of that, again, is predicated on the fact that they're very live to lose their first game. And if you lose your first game, where they are done. So very slippery slope for them. But yeah, hard to make a case for any of these teams in this market specifically. But if you wanted to jump to the reach the final market, that one's a little more interesting, I think.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, so again, same kind of story. If I like Miami in the first market, I like them in the odds to reach the major final. Again, they have the 2 seeds, so no play-in for them. They get Paris or Carolina. I like their odds in that match. And they're on the opposite side of the winner's bracket as Optic. If you're any other team in this major, you want to avoid Optic as long as you can, and they will avoid them until the winner's bracket final, should they get there. So yeah, I like Miami, and I like the teams right next to them. Falcons, I have it 16% to be there at the major final. So it's pretty low, but it's a 1 in 6 shot about. Minnesota not too far behind at about 14%, so 1 in 7 chance for them to show up. Yeah, I just think those are 2 quality teams. The issue is Falcons and G2 play each other in that round 1, but my model just seems to suggest that whoever is coming out of that coin flippy match, like, they have a pretty open runway to make a run at this major. Maybe they fall down to loser's bracket, but maybe they can make their way back on Sunday as well. So Vegas, again, fairly priced in this market. Optic, I'm a little lower on. Thieves, I'm a little lower on. But yeah, again, Paris just way overvalued for some reason, especially given their recent performance. But again, it's land, so it's different. I don't know. We'll see how they do. Maybe they'll prove everyone wrong and just come out and win the whole thing.
Yeah. Model Warfare. So our bets for this week, I'm jumping in early here. I'm doing Carolina versus Paris and Vancouver versus Toronto right off the bat. Two dogs. Take them plus 1.5, and then I'm also going to take Thieves plus 1.5 versus FaZe. You're betting something that's physically impossible. You cannot go 3-0 this week. What's your strategy here?
Yeah, I cannot. It's similar to what I did at Major 1. And yeah, I took two teams to reach the final. I believe it was Paris and Vegas, thinking maybe both of them show up there. Hopefully, at least one does. And one did in Paris. But I think I still missed my third pick that week, regardless. This week, it's more of a one of these teams in the middle, I think, could make a run and go all the way. Not to win, but at least to be there at the end. Miami, I talked about a bunch. They're the 2 seed. They've played really well lately. No weaknesses in any game mode. Opposite side of the bracket is Optic. And yeah, like 4.5 to 1 to be there at the end. I think that's pretty good chances. And then same thing. This is a little interesting because Minnesota and Falcons play each other again in round 1. I put Minnesota as the silver pick and Falcons as the bronze pick because there is a slight difference in the number here. Like Minnesota plus 750 is better than Falcons plus 600. Yeah, I just think whoever wins that first match is very live to make a run through the winner's bracket. And if not, maybe eventually can work their way back in as we navigate through Saturday afternoon and Sunday. So yeah, the hope is one of these teams gets all the way there. It would be a miracle if two of them did. That would be awesome. But yeah, the hope is that it's Optic versus one of these teams probably. But we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah. Other than that, here's the combined model plays, and then there's your picks: Vancouver moneyline, Toronto at 3, Carolina across the board, and Minnesota. None of the futures, because I didn't have any futures bets there at all. Other than that, we'll be back in a couple of weeks by Thursday, April 16th, because there's a couple weeks off for this major around Easter time. We'll see you then. Other than that, enjoy this major too. I think it's going to be a really exciting day. Start super early. Set your alarms early for 10 a.m. Eastern time. Don't know what the West Coast is. That's going to be rough. It's a 7 a.m. start. Maybe you don't go to sleep. I don't know. You guys will figure it out, I'm sure. Other than that, have a good weekend, everyone. And enjoy the major, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. See you, everyone.